Hello Booktube, welcome to the June wrap-up here. I am Sadie Rune, also known as your hostess, and I confess right off the bat, I did not read as much this June as I had hoped. I don't know why. It just wasn't a reading month for me. I only have this little stacky right here, and yeah, I guess I will start where I will start, shall I? First off, I read Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb. It's the first book of the Farseer trilogy. I'm reading the trilogy with my husband. We're buddy reading it while he's away, and we talk back and forth about it. And I have to say that I have heard much about Robin Hobb and how amazing she is. I have heard much of this. I have also heard much about the Farseer trilogy and how awesome it is. I did not like the first book. I liked Fitz, our main character. I liked his abilities. I liked what he had to go through. There were too many dogs getting hurt in this for me to actually like it. At one point, my husband had finished this ahead of me, and I said, "I'm stopping this book if there's another dog that gets injured." And he was like, "Just finish the book," and I did, and I was very sad. And I was like, "You're reading the second book and telling me, because I can't do another one. Like, cannot." I was way too emotional at the time. It was right at the beginning of the month. He had just left for a bit, and I was not prepared to deal with the emotions of that. I did enjoy Fitz. I enjoyed the Fool. My favorite character is Burrich. I loved him. I still love him. And I really hated Verity. Basically, we're following a bastard who is being trained to be an apprentice assassin. And if you've watched any other booktubes, chances are you've already heard a rundown of what this is. It's very much fantasy. My husband picked it. He's a fantasy person. Again, did not like that book. But we'd already bought the trilogy. We were already reading it together, so I decided, okay, I'll put up with the second book. He told me there was no shameless puppy deaths. So off I went into it. In this one, there is a wolf. Nothing bad happens to the wolf, which is good because I probably would have lost my nuts and thrown this against a wall. Now, in comparison to the first book, which I was like okay with, I loved this book. This book actually is a lot bigger. I think the first book, when I can just look at it, it was 435 pages. It felt a bit of sloggy because I got so unimpressed with it. Whereas in the second book, you've got 675 pages, and I read it in a handful of days as opposed to taking a week or two. I loved the second book. Just jumped right through it. The character development was so much better. The story got broader. I didn't find it as repetitious as I had previously heard Hobbs' books can suffer from. So, totally sold in the second book. Was really glad I bought the trilogy and decided to keep going, and glad that my husband persevered for us. And I am into the third book, but I have not finished it yet. So that I will probably finish in July. And that one's 700 plus pages as well. So these are chunkers. But, yeah. So in this one, we continue to follow Fitz and what's going on with him. If I tell you too much about it, it kind of spoils the first book, but let's just say it's Fitz and a wolf. Although I do have to complain. One quibble, which really has nothing to do with the story or anything, but I prefer the British covers to the American covers. And we've already decided we're going to read the Live Ship Trader ones as well next. We're going to go chronologically. So I am on the third book. I read the first two. So if you're anything like me and animal violence really bugs you and sets you off, as soon as you think something's going to happen, if you're reading the first book, just skip the entire chapter. Just skip it. Just skip over it. You don't need it. You don't need that in your life. But persevering through the first book is worth it for the second book, and I'm hoping the third book pays off. And then there was the Getting Graphic. And so this is what I did in 24 hours, and I am now going to proceed to go through it for you. I started off with, took a break in between. I read the first two of these. So I read Strangers in Paradise Volume 1, I Dream of, Volume 1, the collected Strangers in Paradise, and then I read Volume 2, I Dream of You. Now, I'm going to confess, I have every volume of Strangers in Paradise. I've read it before, I loved it, and subsequently had to go out and buy everything. And I remember when the last couple volumes of this came out, I had started reading them, and I continued to read them until the series concluded, and I'm just a sucker for them. So I reread Volume 1 and Volume 2, and this is a story about best friends, Francine Peters, and Katina Chuvansky, also known as Kachu. And as you can see here, Neil Gaiman blurbed it, and I love Terry Moore. He, we can talk all we want about how women know how to write women or blah, 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 blah. Anyone can write anybody as long as they do it well. There's, some people can't do it well. Some people can, whatever. But in this case, Terry Moore really gets women, and I really love that. And so this is a story about the two friends. Francine is getting out of a relationship that's kind of toxic. Kachu is really screwed up in the head because of her life. She's had a really long and torrid backstory, and she falls for a guy who's actually only there because there's a mob tie-in, and there's escorts, and it's nuts. It's nuts, but I love it. There's also LGBTQ quotient in here because, of course, Kachu is a lesbian. However, at some point she becomes bisexual, or discovers that she is bisexual. However, she is a staunch lesbian in the beginning, so we've got a lot of interesting, and of course she has a crush on Francine, which is a bit questionable, but Francine in turn kind of has a thing for Kachu. Yeah, it gets odd. It gets really odd, and I love it. So if you haven't checked out Strangers in Paradise, do. You won't be let down. Then, so I finished those two, and I decided to do a palette cleanser with Princess Jellyfish, the first volume. Hold on. Go away, pop-up. I have seen the anime. I watched some of the anime first with a friend of mine, and subsequently bought the first 3 volumes. And I believe Volume 5 just came out, so I need to get 4 and 5 now. And so here's the cover. It's by Akiko Higashimura, and I'm sorry for butchering the name. So this is a story about a group of otaku who live in essentially a rooming house together. And the premise of this is that they all love being giant introverted geeks who want nothing to do with the opposite sex except for in their fantasies. Be it one girl has a thing for older men, one has a thing for a specific historical period in Japan. And so they meet this person, and originally our main character, Sukumi, who is obsessed with jellyfish. That's why she's Princess Jellyfish. She thinks jellyfish look like princesses. She runs into this person, whom we come to find out is... Doesn't say on the back what... I forget what her name is. Okay, so the premise is this person here is actually the son of a well-known diplomat and is cross-dressing so that he doesn't have to become a diplomat or a governmental employee or to work in politics. He just does not want to. But in the process, becomes close friends with these people that all live in this household. But they don't want anything to do with her because and they only know her as her. They don't know that she is actually a male. But they don't like people who have a lot of fashion sense and stuff. So it's quite interesting to see the role reversal in that they're really judgmental towards our lovely little cross-dresser here because she's so beautiful and so well put together, etc., etc. And love triangle. See, I don't read YA, but in manga, give me a good love triangle. her brother falls for her, but only when she's made up to look like her. Yeah. Anyway, first volume, amazing. I can't wait to go on to the second one. If you're having a rough day, this is the kind of stuff I read. And then to finish off, now keep in mind I started late. I think I started around 5 p.m. because I'd been out about and running about and doing stuff because that's what I have to do. So I read the first 2 volumes of Strangers in Paradise, the first volume of Princess Jellyfish, and then I went back for volumes 3 and 4 of Strangers in Paradise, It's a Good Life, and Love Me Tender, respectfully. So we continue to see the story of Kachu evolve, and we get introduced to David, who I love. I love David. David is awesome. And suddenly, there's our love triangle. So, yeah. I'm not going to spoil it for you. If you get into it and you read it, it just keeps going. It just keeps getting better. It kind of gets screwed up. The end is kind of intriguing. It's been a long time since I've made my way through these. I forget what year they closed down, but I know it's been like, I want to say it's been 10 years since I've read these, but I'm enjoying reading through them again. I'll probably keep going on my own now that Getting Graphic is done. The last book I read, which I read actually between the 2 Farseer books because I needed a palate cleanser after all the dead puppies, was Dolores by Sarah Taylor. Meow. Frank says hi. This is an advanced reading copy. It comes out in August 2017. Wow. Well, come on then. Come. Come. No? Alright, she's not having it. So, I was intrigued by the blurb of this. I go through library thing, and that is where I get my arcs and such, if I want them. And I really was intrigued by the opening blurb that's, I didn't realize my mother was a person until I was 13 years old, and she pulled me out of bed, put me in the back of her car, and we left home and my dad with no explanations. I thought Ma was all that she was and all she had ever wanted to be, and I was wrong. So this is a story in which the Lauras are actually people that her mother knew through group homes, etc., while she was growing up. The mother is basically, we're told the whole story through Alex, who we aren't sure if Alex is a boy or a girl. She uses she pronouns some of the times, but not all of the times, and is often very oblique, so we don't truly know the gender or the sex of our narrator, except that we assume she's a woman in the beginning, and then we think she might be a boy by the end. We aren't quite sure. And that was one of my problems with this book, is I thought it tried to tackle way too much. So we're looking at the mother who grabs her out of bed, and they go on this epic road trip to basically have her revenge, or close those doors on the chapters of her lives that she's left open while she was off, married to her husband, having a child. And I think the book attempts to take on too much. At the end of the book, there's a plot twist in which we find out kind of why we're on this road trip, but we don't really know. I read it really fast. I actually quite enjoyed it, but I found that there were so many loose ends that if you wanted to read this, I'd say take it to the beach, because it will be perfect beach reading. But if you're looking for something more substantial, you could... I think this could have been 3 other books. This could have been 3 books, and it would have been great. But as it stands, we're just chasing these people around. There's a cult. There's a religious cult, there's kidnapping, there's an androgynous narrator, which I like. I appreciate the fact that there is an androgynous narrator. And there's sex out of nowhere. There's also a blowjob out of nowhere that makes no sense whatsoever. And yeah, I'm told that this person is really good. I gave it 3 stars, I think. Too much going on. too much. And that is everything that I read this month. I'm hoping to really kick it into high gear next month. I have a fair amount of, actually this month because it's actually July, I have a couple of visitors coming in, but I also have a root canal, which I'm guessing will have me down for a couple days. So fingers crossed more reading gets done, and I will see you next month.